everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric here in Lisbon, Portugal, checking in with AJ in Austin. This is episode 187. How's it going, AJ?
It's going well, man. All is well in Austin. I've gotten a lot of questions from friends about, hey, is everything okay with Harvey? And, I just feel guilty. I'm like, nah, we're doing fine here, minus a couple little things. So Austin really wasn't touched. A little bit of rain, but nothing extreme. But man, things are good. I'm jealous that you're in Portugal. That's on my short list of places that I would really like to go that I have not been.
Yeah, Portugal has also been on my list for quite some time. Kind of a last-minute choice to stick around and spend a little bit of time here. Our good friend Idausa Ness from Mimic Method has been posted up here, I think, since roughly we hung out in Brazil for Carnival. So since around February, he's been back and forth hanging out in Europe. And dude, it's a really cool spot. I just got in last night, so haven't really done much exploring at all, but already a couple of observations. I mean, one, there's like everywhere there's little things that I can see, like, oh, that's where Brazil got that idea. Lots of little things. I actually just went out and had like the quintessential Brazilian lunch of like fries and rice and some pan-fried chicken. The only Portuguese additions are a plate of olives and some bread to go along with it. People have been super nice. I've really enjoyed had a great interaction just talking with the lady that I got lunch from today. And man, I will tell you, the accent Portuguese is I can immediately understand why people that speak English as a second language go to someplace like Ireland or Scotland and are just totally, absolutely lost, even if they've got pretty solid second language skills and, got by fine in the US or got by fine in England. There have been a couple of conversations that I've had to ask people to repeat themselves like 4 or 5 times to get like a really simple thing, because the accent is just totally different.
Yeah. How about the slang? I mean, do they just use words that Brazilians don't use regularly?
I don't think I haven't gotten into enough convos to get to that. So far, it's been super simple, but just really not using vowels and enunciating like T's and D's, which in Brazilian Portuguese is like really dropped off. So just makes for a totally different sound. And it's been super hard for me to figure out what people are saying to me, but definitely fun to get back to the kind of language learning, being a gringo and not quite knowing what's going on it's been interesting.
Yeah, man. So everybody, we've got some relatively exciting news with Turkish Airlines that we're going to get into in a minute here. But man, let's talk a little bit about your Ireland experience. You've got some pretty good notes here.
Yeah. So I guess real quick, let's do a quick outline of the show. So today we're going to talk Turkish Miles and Smiles. We announced, I believe, 2 weeks ago that Turkish is the newest transfer partner of Citi ThankYou Rewards. So today we're going to dive into some of the sweet spots with the Turkish frequent flyer program and how you can use transferred Citi points to get better rates than you can with some of the other big programs that folks are more familiar with. So we're going to dive into Turkish in just a minute. I'm going to share a little bit. I've been in Ireland for the last 10 days, so share a little bit about my experience there. We do have kind of a large number of travel plans to Ireland from people that have signed up and are tracking and working towards booking trips with points in the Abroaders app. So I thought I'd share some experience with Ireland. And then we've also got news and updates at the end of the show. And like always, all of the links from today's episode will be at abroaders.com/187. So you want to start with Ireland? Let's start with Ireland.
Yeah, man. You've got some interesting notes here. So I guess there's some things that are, directly applicable to the podcast as far as your car rental experience, which cards you use, which benefits you received from those cars. And then what I'm actually more interested about is the actual driving experience. This seems pretty interesting.
Yeah. So, well, I guess we can start with that because it's definitely interesting. So, if you've been listening for a while, this was my second time experience driving on the left side of the road. Got a quick tutorial of that in Cape Town earlier this year, which everything went smooth, no accidents. But Ireland made it even more interesting because the roads are super narrow. And this is something I had heard coming into the experience, just kind of knowing that, especially once you get out of Dublin and kind of into the country, so to speak, the roads are just not wide, and that turned out to be even more true than I had feared. There's just a lot of situations where you just can't pass. You can't have two cars going opposite directions on the same road, and so you've got to like back up until you find a driveway, a big enough shoulder to be able to get out of the way. I guess to start, I rented a car using my Amex Platinum benefit. I rented a car through Hertz, and we talked about this a little while back. Hertz has a deal currently going on through United Airlines where you can earn points from a Hertz rental by signing up through the United website. So we'll put the link to that in the show notes. For the most part, the rates are good through that, and so I earned about 3,000 miles for my rental by going through that website. And because I have the Amex Platinum personal card, I get a couple of really nice benefits. Number one, you get membership with Hertz Gold, which gives you the ability to skip the line, which was very clutch. When we got into Dublin, there were about 20 people in line, and so I just went up to the other counter and just like grabbed some keys. It also comes with a free upgrade, so I reserved a just kind of mid-size sort of standard car and ended up getting upgraded to an Audi, which was pretty cool. It turned out to be a really, really exceptional car. That's definitely one that would be on my list if I end up buying a car anytime in the future. If they're still making those, I would love to have this car. Going along with driving on the left side, you also have to shift gears left-handed, which was a really surreal experience. The pedals are still in the same position, so clutch is still on the left, brakes in the middle, accelerators on the right, but it definitely took me a little while to get used to having to shift gears left-handed instead of right-handed. So overall, if you are planning on doing a trip around Ireland, I highly recommend it, and despite it being a little bit stressful with the driving, if you are comfortable driving, I recommend doing it just because there were just so many places that we stopped and were able to check stuff out that, if you were on a big tour bus or had somebody else driving you, unless you hire a private driver, you really wouldn't have been able to see nearly as much as we did or have the flexibility. So that was really nice. Overall, we did just under 1,000 kilometers, so like around 600 miles of driving. Started in Dublin, went south and stopped in Avoca, and then went across the country to the Dingle Peninsula, which is on the Atlantic coast, and then drove up to the Cliffs of Moher, which is like one of the more famous pictures you'll see from Ireland, just huge, giant rocks along the Atlantic, and then stopped in Galway before going back to Dublin. So pretty interesting experience. The one thing I would say, as far as if you are going to be driving, do not trust the estimates for travel time. We had this all mapped out. We thought we were super clever and really planned ahead and did everything right. And Google estimates that the driving that we did should be about 14 hours. And I think it was probably close to 24 hours of actual driving time. And that's just because the speed limits that they give you are basically the absolute maximum that any sane person would ever want to drive on that road. And so I found myself like averaging like 20 kilometers an hour under the speed limit, just because only on like the absolute straightaways that you see like once every 20 miles do you actually have an opportunity to like go the regular speed limit. The rest of it is just way too many hairpin turns and narrow roads to be able to go. So overall, I would underestimates you big time.
I would tell everyone to take note of that, because I've obviously had countless car trips with Eric, and Eric's not exactly a slow driver. So if you're saying that,
Yeah, my mom's not super comfortable with not being the driver, and so I could tell she was stressed out on some of those hairier sections of road where it's just windy, just one curve after another, tons of blind spots where you just gotta go slow, because if there's somebody walking, or if there's a bike, or if another car is 3 inches into your lane, then you don't have any room to go anywhere. But yeah, besides the driving, definitely would recommend Ireland as a destination. I think it was a pretty short, easy flight. It was only 5 hours and 20 minutes to fly there from the East Coast. We took off from Hartford, Connecticut, which is just a little bit west of Boston. So super short flight if you're departing from New York or Boston or Hartford. Super cheap in points with Aer Lingus. People were incredibly friendly, especially outside of Dublin.
That does not surprise me at all, based on my exchanges I've had with Irish people.
Yeah, I mean, great culture, man. Great people. There was one, like, the worst day of driving was like we kind of got behind the 8 ball. We were thought that we were going to get in well before dark, and with still like 2 hours of Google estimated time on the clock. It was starting to get dark, and I stopped for gas. And this really friendly lady just forced me into like a 10-minute tourism tips section. She just wouldn't let me leave the place. Like, I couldn't pay her. She wanted to tell me all of these places to go. So it was really sweet, just like super nice, well-meaning folks. And if you do go to Ireland and you're not 100% sure what to see, just find somebody to ask, and they'll probably tell you more than you ever wanted to know.
Yeah, man, let me cut you off for a second, because I love your note here, under your first note under the value. What Erik's got down here under the value section of his notes is food is expensive and subpar. That doesn't really surprise me. What subpar in what ways? I'm curious. Like, I would not have expected that Irish food would have been anything to write home about, but what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was actually more related to the first thing than anything. That just it felt like you were just kind of always paying like an extra $10 for something that just didn't seem at all exceptional. So we definitely ate well, but I think on average a meal at a restaurant probably ran about $20 per person, even in kind of less nice places. Taking an example from like hometown AJ, like a place like the Log Jam, or some place that's just like where you get $7 burgers, and maybe if you really want to go for it, you spend $10. That kind of place was still like 20 or $25 for a meal. Oh, wow. Food wasn't terrible. It was just it felt like everything was pretty expensive, and it was very hard to find just good, healthy food that wasn't expensive. So plan ahead for that, and it's always nice if you can get a basically free flight over there. Then it frees you up to be able to spend a little bit more money on accommodation and food.
Did anyone have shepherd's pie?
No, we didn't have any shepherd's pie.
Okay, I might be an asshole. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that's an Irish thing, but there's like a 10% chance that's actually a Scottish thing. So feel free to correct me, anyone, if you're offended by that.
No, I think I did. That was definitely an option. So if it's not naturally an Irish thing, they have adopted it into their menus as well. But yeah, didn't branch out to that. Had a lot of fresh seafood, which is nice. There were some good options for fresh seafood, shrimp and lobster and crab and stuff like that. So if you like seafood, it's not a bad destination, especially if it doesn't stress you out to pay $20 or so for a meal.
Yeah, man. How about accommodation? Looks like you did some Airbnb and some Booking.com.
Yeah, I really do like Booking.com, just because the rankings, they have a really nice review system that tends to give you a pretty clear idea of what you're going to get. Again, it's definitely more expensive than lots of other places. Even sort of into the country, like Dublin, I knew was going to be expensive. We paid at least $200 a night for accommodation.
That's kind of surprising. Like, I would, you expect that in Paris and in London, and even a place like Barcelona that's just so heavily hit with tourism. But kind of surprises me.
Yeah, and again, like just sort of a value proposition thing for from my perspective, where I was, trying not to spend a ton of money on the trip. It was surprisingly expensive. But again, if you pay nothing for the flights or next to nothing, able to use points for some other things, there's some good opportunities. There's also some hotels in Dublin where you can use points. We had a chance to use like points to stay at the Intercontinental, which is an IHG property. I think that could have been a good option potentially. But outside of Dublin, there's really not much in the way of major hotel chains. So you're going to be looking at Airbnb or some other sort of bed and breakfast style booking accommodations. But everything, turned out pretty well. We didn't stay in any nightmarish places. So, it was a good trip all around. Definitely would recommend, to people, especially that like natural beauty and, enjoy, the type of trip where you're driving around and seeing some of the countryside. I think it's a pretty cool and unique destination. Definitely worth considering, especially, if you can hop across the Atlantic and use some points for the flights. It's definitely way nicer than flying 10 hours to Berlin or flying, into Rome or someplace that's just a much longer flight. Didn't really feel like an international or a transatlantic flight coming out of Hartford and getting there in about 5 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, man, that's like not much different from New York to LA. Well, man, that's a good trip report. I'm definitely gonna have to get there. That's like not quite as high on my list as a place like Portugal or what we're about to kind of talk about, Turkey. Turkey is up there on my list. So, so first of all, this program name, Miles and Smiles, keeping it jolly in Turkey.
Yes.
So this is. We can call this being good news, which is always fun to report because it's always a mixed bag of programs changing things and transfer partners, and we'll get into some other stuff later. But I'm excited to talk about this because I've flown Turkish a couple of times, and it's not Emirates, but it's, I think, a surprisingly nice airline. I've had good experiences flying Turkish.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway, so to run it back just a little bit, I mentioned this at the top of the show, but the big reason we're talking about this is previously the only major ways to get Turkish miles was by flying with Star Alliance airline and claiming the miles with the Turkish program. So it wasn't on most people's radar. And so the really good news is that Citi ThankYou Rewards has added them as an instant one-to-one transfer partner. So you can really easily take points from either the Citi Prestige, the Sapphire, the Citi ThankYou Preferred or the Citi ThankYou Premier card and transfer those directly over to Turkish to take advantage of some of the booking opportunities that we're going to talk about here. So today we're going to just kind of run through the basic rules that apply to the Turkish program. There are definitely some quirks. This is not for everybody. But I think that there's enough good opportunities where, in particular, if you're, booking travel, there's some nice opportunities in business class where the tickets are cheaper. And they also allow a stopover and an open jaw, which means that you can see a couple of destinations potentially on a trip from the US to Europe, make a stop in Istanbul and see some other destinations. So I thought it was worth getting into this and just kind of talking over some of the basics here. So before we talk specifically about Turkish, a couple of major rules here, which apply to the Citi ThankYou Rewards transfer. You can only transfer Citi points to your own frequent flyer account. So if you have Citi points in your name, you have to transfer them to your Turkish account. You can redeem Turkish miles for other people. So in other words, if I transferred my Citi points to my Turkish account, I could book a flight for AJ to Istanbul. But there's some paperwork required. So it's not quite as straightforward or easy. And so I wanted to bring up the fact that you can also transfer your ThankYou points before you move them over to Turkish. And so you can share up to 100,000 ThankYou points in a year, or you can receive up to 100,000 into your account. And so what I'd recommend if you want to book a flight for somebody else, is probably a better idea to have you transfer your Citi ThankYou points to their Citi ThankYou account, and then they can move their Citi points to their own Turkish account.
No.
That'll save you that paperwork.
Now, one thing about that, if that other person does not have a Citi card, then they cannot have a Citi ThankYou Rewards account.
Yeah, I think that's the case. It might actually be possible to just sign up for a Citi ThankYou account. That's something I'll have to get back to everybody on, because it didn't occur to me that that could be, potentially a restriction there, but I think it is possible. Maybe 60-40, not super confident. So if I figure out the answer, we'll put that in the show notes as well. And then one other really big important thing is that points that you share to other people, their thank you accounts, are only valid for 90 days. So you only want to do this if you're definitely ready to book a flight, you've got everything searched out and you know what's available, then go ahead and make that transfer. Otherwise, shared points expire after 3 months and you can't do anything about it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the rules with Turkish. They do apply fuel surcharges to tickets. So the taxes and fees, the out-of-pocket cash cost is potentially going to be a little bit higher than with some programs, but doesn't seem to be outrageous by any means. The award chart is zone-based. So they've got basically each country is categorized in one of, I think, 8 or 9 different global regions. And so there's a flat price for economy, business, or first class travel from one region to another. So North America to Europe is a flat price, Europe to Asia is a flat price, et cetera, and so on. You can book one-way tickets for half the price of round trip. The one big thing here that's important to know is that you can only book flights on Turkish-operated aircraft, Turkish-operated flights through the website. And it looks like to book Star Alliance flights, you have to actually ticket them in person or go through hell with email and phone call centers. So I think the big takeaway here, if you're considering using Turkish as one of Citi's thank you transfer partners, you want to be looking at flights that are operated by Turkish, unless you're more advanced and are prepared for some extra effort and potentially a trip to your local airport to ticket, assuming that they have a Turkish Airlines ticket office in an airport near you.
That's odd, but either way, man, how do you want to get into this? Because we've got some interesting stuff. Do you want to go? You kind of went over some of the basic routing rules and fees. Do you want to get into some of these sweet spots in their chart?
Yeah, so I think I got almost everything as far as the routing rules. We mentioned you can do a stopover, and you can also do an open jaw. Everything else is sort of more high level. I've got a link in the show notes if you really want to read through the rest of the rules, but nothing else that's super important. One other thing that's just noteworthy is the change fees are really low. So you can change your flight for $50 roughly, and if or that's basically to get a refund. So if you need to cancel your ticket and get the miles back, and you can also change date or time or routing for $25. So that's quite a bit better. Most of the other programs are in the $150 to $200 range for change fees. But yeah, let's talk through some of the sweet spots here. I think a big reason I want to focus on the ones that actually apply to booking on Turkish, because with flights that are operated by Turkish, like I said, you can book them online. So this is quite a bit easier. The big one, business class to Europe, is 90,000 round trip, so 45,000 one way. A lot of the other programs, if you look at like Delta's charging around 80,000 one way. American best case scenario, I think, is 57,500. United is either 55 or 70,000. So this is significantly better than those programs. So that's one definitely to be aware of. I think you can also do business class to Asia via Europe. Flying to Asia round trip in business class is 135, so that's going to be a little bit better.
That one really sticks out to me because of the stopover. Yeah. This is kind of almost like that old United play you could run for. That was nothing. It was like about 65,000 points, 70,000 points.
Yep, in economy though.
In economy class, but yeah, that's a huge value. And then I see you've also got
too, which is super cool.
I was just gonna say South Africa is a tricky one to get to, just because there's not that many flights from the U.S. and even for people that have One World American, you're looking at going potentially through the Middle East anyway. So it's a tricky place to get to, and that's a long ass flight. So not a horrible idea to splurge if you're heading to South Africa, especially via Istanbul.
Yeah. Those are the big ones in terms of just areas where they just do much better than the other programs that would apply to tickets that you can book online. And so next up, I want to talk about a few of the Star Alliance opportunities. Again, we don't really have all the information. I'm hoping that some of this changes and that once they start seeing people transferring Citi points to Turkish, maybe some of this partner booking ability will loosen up. I would hope that Citi could put some pressure on Turkish to make it possible or easier to book through call centers rather than having to ticket and pay for your flight at the airport. But there are a couple of big opportunities that are disproportionately good enough that if you happen to live in a city where Turkish has a ticket office, like if you live in Houston and it's not too much of a pain to head over to the airport to finalize your ticket, it could be really worthwhile. The big thing about zone-based charts is the prices that you pay in miles really depend on what countries are included in each region. And so the thing about Turkish's award chart is that there's only basically one massive zone for Asia. There's a Central Asia zone, which includes a lot of countries that don't get visited very much, like Afghanistan and Pakistan. But the rest of Asia, Japan is in the same region as Sri Lanka, which is going to be like a 10-hour flight at least. And you've got, so you could basically fly from Japan to Bangkok, from Korea to Vietnam. All of those are like at the very minimum 6 or 7 hour flights. And those would be 35,000 points in business class. So that's an area that just really stood out to me as an opportunity where it could be worth going through some extra work to be able to book a ticket on a Star Alliance partner. The other one is booking a round trip domestically on United because business class is 25,000 points round trip within the U.S. And the U.S. includes Bermuda, Mexico, and a couple of the islands that are owned by the Netherlands. So they are Dutch overseas territories. That includes Saint Martin. And so using the stopover rule, you could do like a round trip from San Francisco to New York and stop in the Caribbean, either Bermuda or St. Martin, and pay 25,000 round trip in business class, which is the same cost basically as a flight from, I don't know, Chicago to Newark round trip in economy if you use United miles. So just like basically paying half price what most of the U.S. based carriers charge for travel within the U.S. And there's some opportunities. United has some nice lie flat business class product for flights from New York to San Francisco and New York to L.A. So this is a pretty cool opportunity there if you live in a place where you can ticket one of these Star Alliance reservations.
Yeah, the Points guy had a decent article about this, and the screenshot that you took is pretty nice, where they show the other options. Munich to Dubai, Brazil to Bogota to London, kind of strange one you wouldn't think about. Sydney to Honolulu. Just there's a handful of sweet spots here. I guess the thing that I'd be curious to look more into is to really check in on the route map of Turkish Airlines, because for me, I'm not particularly interested in driving to an airport to get that done. However, it'd have to be a pretty nice itinerary. I would totally do that for a business class flight to South Africa. I would drive to the airport and do that. But man, I guess the key takeaway of this though is we've got more options. We've got a currency in Citi ThankYou Rewards that is really only getting stronger. There was a pretty big gap between Amex and Chase and Citi, where Amex and Chase were kind of the leaders. But Citi's closing the gap, and that's good for competition, and that's good for you, me, and everyone listening to the podcast. Yeah,
absolutely. So anyways, we're going to have a link to the Points Guy post that AJ mentioned, some other information, just the rest of the rules and info about some other sweet spots if you're interested. If you are interested in a Star Alliance ticket, do reach out to us. Like I said, this is all pretty new information and they haven't been a partner very long. So I suspect that some workarounds are going to surface as far as not having to get to the airport. So if you're interested in one of those tickets, hire our booking service and we will get it sorted out and figure out if there's a way to get you ticketed without having to take a trip to the airport. And also, that applies for tickets operated by Turkish if you want us to try and sort out how we can help you spend fewer points, because Citi's got, other transfer partners that, just cost way more. And so if we can find a way to use Turkish in the places that it makes sense, that can be a big mileage savings. All right. So that I think wraps it up. AJ, anything else that you want to add as far as the miles and smiles go?
No, I guess final takeaways. I love the name. They're not taking themselves too seriously. And Turkish is an airline I would urge people to give a shot, because I had kind of low expectations going into it, but it's one of the better airlines I've flown. Out of all the airlines I've flown, I'd put it in the upper third, the upper quarter, like that 75th percentile or up of airlines I've flown, with service and product and all those things.
Yep. And I would also add that a lot of our booking customers that do the business class flights look for Turkish as one of their priority airlines. I know just a couple of people that we've worked with a few different times that have flown on Turkish business class and said it is really a nice quality product. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. If we get an excuse to double back to Europe anytime soon, make a stop in Istanbul would be super cool. So certainly more to follow on that. And as we start helping out with some bookings, we'll be sure to update you guys on anything we learn that'll make it easier for you to get your own trip booked.
Cool, man. All right. Well, let's move on to some news and updates.
All right. So we've got some interesting stuff this week. A couple of new card offers. Let's start with that. It's Southwest Companion Pass time once again, and the timing is really good. I did not expect this to happen for them to bring back a 50 or 60K offer so close to the end of the year. So just as a quick review, Southwest Companion Pass means that you basically get buy one, get one free airfare for you and a travel companion. You can only change your travel companion a couple of times, but if you can earn the companion pass and you do it in the beginning part of the year, it means that you are going to be able to have basically buy one, get one free on both award and paid flights for 2 years. Now, let
me cut you off for a second. And when Erik says buy one, get one free, this isn't any like sneaky, you must actually buy the ticket. If you can get a ticket a la points, you get that second one for free. You don't have to pay. You don't have to buy the ticket. If you can use points for one ticket and get the other one free, which is not like some companion passes you see on other airlines.
Yeah. This is by far the best deal in domestic travel, and Southwest is expanding their route network as well. Now, the big question here is how long this offer is going to hang around, because right now we're recording on Monday, so this is September 4th. Show's going to come out on the 6th. The best time to earn these points is absolutely in January. So ideally, you don't really want to go for this until the beginning of October, because then you can earn the bonus through the months of October, November, and December, and be able to actually get the companion pass, have the points that are required post to your account in January, and get it for 2 years. So it'll be really exciting and interesting if this offer sticks around through October. We don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, that's another good point, where you don't know if they're teasing it a little bit, where the people that try to wait and perfectly time it, they drop the offer. But generally the sign-up bonuses stay around for a little while. But man, the one thing though I think we need to be clear on is if you spend enough money to hit that minimum spend, let's say you get these cards in early October and you spend enough money to hit the minimum spend before those 3 months, then you're going to lose about a year on the companion pass, correct? Ideally, you want to hit that minimum spend. Wouldn't you ideally want to hit the minimum spend in January if you're trying to maximize this thing?
Yes, exactly. So
if you're spending more money, then there's a chance that you could potentially hit the minimum spend in November, which still leaves you with 13 months of a companion pass. But the idea would be whatever the spending requirement is to get your points, ideally you would do that on January 1 or after.
Right. And so the key thing is that you just want to hold off, keep very careful track of your spending and make sure it's $2,000 spend in the first 90 days. And so you want to spend less than $2,000 intentionally until the first of the year rolls around and then cross that threshold. I'm just looking through the offer right now. It doesn't say anything about an expiration for this offer. So that's pretty typical. Sometimes banks will offer and let you know when the offer is going to expire, but that information is not out. So for now, I would not go for this, but we're going to keep track of this offer. And if it's still around at the beginning of October, it is an awesome deal. If you're traveling a ton with a travel companion, it's not the worst thing in the world to pick up the offer now, but I certainly would wait on this one if at all possible and see if it's still around at the beginning of October.
Yeah, man. Speaking of pretty good offers in 60K, we've got some really good news about the Advantage Aviator Red Card, where it was a really good offer for the last, I don't know, 4-6 months or whatever, but 60,000 American Airlines miles after your first purchase. So if you've got decent credit and you don't spend much money, this card is your saving grace if you have not gotten it yet, because it's generally very difficult to get more than 30,000 points, let alone 60 for a first purchase. So this is that classic example. You get this card, you go buy a pack of gum, and next month you got 60,000 American Airlines miles.
Right, and that's enough for a round trip to Brazil, to anywhere in South America. That's enough for a round trip to Europe. That's enough almost for a round trip to Asia. You might have to, depending on where in Asia you're traveling, you may have to tack on some extra points through spend to be able to get there. Or if you have some American miles already from a flight that you've taken in the past, I think you maybe need closer to 65,000 or even 70,000 for some places in Asia. But this is essentially get a card, pay a $95 annual fee, and buy a pack of gum, and you've got enough points to book a flight that, taxes and fees, like round trip wherever you want to go, pretty much for probably under $100 in taxes and fees if you do it right. This is an exceptional deal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to program news and some rural stuff. So we've got some stuff going on with Air Berlin.
They're done for, man.
Oh, I did not know. I thought they were on the brink, and I thought Lufthansa was kind of their life support.
So the big thing that happened, like this has kind of been unfolding for the last couple of weeks, but Etihad, which was a major shareholder in Air Berlin and also in their frequent flyer program, which was a separate entity, has pulled out support. Lufthansa is not helping. Lufthansa is just buying assets at this point. So they are in the German bankruptcy process. But the big news is that, number one, they are canceling flights already. So a lot of flights, especially long-haul flights to the U.S., are canceled. And if you are in a position where you've got a Air Berlin flight, you're probably not going to see your money back from Air Berlin. So this is a situation where you want to take up your credit card that you use to pay for the flight and take advantage of the insurance. If they refuse to deliver the service that you paid for, you can file a dispute for services not rendered and get that money back. So your purchase protection is gonna be able to get you your airfare back. But it looks like they're pretty much done for, and now it's just kind of a scramble to pick up assets, planes, and more relevant for the airlines, even with Air Berlin, is slots. So they've got different flights that they're allowed to operate, and so the bidding process is sort of already underway. But it looks like Air Berlin is pretty much done for.
I mean, that's just got to be an awful, awful spot as a business where you're working your ass off and you know that you're still dead, and it's just you've got this responsibility to try to get back as much money as possible to pay back whoever is ultimately owed money. That's just whew.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of links. If you're interested in this story, you can read more. We got quite a bit to cover today, so we're going to move on from that, but we'll have a couple of posts in the show notes that explain a little bit more about what's going on. And again, if you're in a position where you've got an Air Berlin flight, you're going to want to talk with the credit card that you paid for. If you got Air Berlin points, you're probably out of luck because it looks like their top bonus program is shut down. You can't redeem miles.
Now is the time. If you can trade in those points for a toaster oven, if that's an option, now is the time to do it. That's the only time that we'll ever advise you using points for a toaster oven, some bullshit household appliance.
Fortunately, I took a look when I first saw this house of cards starting to come down. We don't have hardly anybody that has top bonus points, and if they do, they're super few. Nobody's got like 400,000 that we're tracking at least. So I don't think it's affected a ton of people in the U.S. It's not a super common program, but something to be aware of. And one reason that you don't want to stockpile miles, you want to use them when you can, because unexpected things can happen.
Yeah, things happen. Well, moving forward, man, we've got some good news with American Airlines and SPG. So you can transfer star points to American and get up to a 30% bonus right now.
Yep. This is pretty similar to something we saw a little ways back. So with Starwood, if you transfer 20,000 points, you automatically get 25,000 miles in the Destination Frequent Flyer program. That applies to all of the partners. This promotion, I believe, is being run by American. So it's essentially if you transfer in Star points, American's going to post some extra points rather than Starwood paying for some extra points. At least that's how I understood it. But it means that, you can turn 20,000 Star points into a little over 30,000 American miles for a limited time. This isn't something I would necessarily make transfers to American speculatively. We've seen this a couple of different times. You do have a little bit of time to think about it. So you've got through October 15th if you want to receive that bonus. Could be a good way to top up your American balance, especially if you've got a specific redemption in mind. But the nice thing about SPG points is that they have so many transfer partners, and so unless you're really sure that you're going to need American miles, you might hold off. This is kind of one of those borderline opportunities where it's good enough that it could make sense for a lot of people, but also the value of having those star points that you can transfer to over 30 other programs. Unless you've got a redemption in mind, you might want to keep them where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Next thing here we've got is I guess it's some bad news. We don't need to sugarcoat it. So there's been some new developments about eligibility around bonuses from the Sapphire family of credit cards from Chase.
Yes.
So it looks like things are going to change where you're not going to be eligible for multiple Sapphire product bonuses. Probably the two best examples would be the Chase Sapphire Preferred and the Chase Sapphire Reserve. From here on out, more or less, you're going to have to pick if you want to get a card or the bonus. You'd have to pick which one you want, and you're going to have to live with it. And there will be some developments, there will be some workarounds, but they're definitely clamping down a little bit on these particular card products.
Yeah, so for the fine print, we're going to have a link that explains a little bit more in detail what's going on. But just to kind of put it in the context of how we've been trying to help folks out that are requesting advice about which card might make the most sense. A lot of people got the Sapphire Reserve when it had the 100,000 point offer in the middle of last year. And so what we've been recommending up until this week was that if you already have the Sapphire Reserve card, it might still make sense to get the Sapphire Preferred because of the 50,000 point sign up bonus. Maybe you've still got some of those 100K points left over, and you can pretty easily get an extra 50,000 points with the Sapphire Preferred. And so that's just not true anymore. They're not going to approve you for a card if you've got an existing Sapphire account, so something in the Sapphire family that's open. The technical sort of fine print on the rules is that it needs to be at least 24 months since you last got a bonus from a Sapphire product, and you can't currently have a Sapphire card open. So that means that if 2 years ago you got a bonus for the Sapphire Preferred and you've now downgraded that card to the Freedom or the Freedom Unlimited, you can get the Sapphire Reserve. But other than that, you're not going to be eligible. So that's kind of a bummer. Frankly, it was something that probably was destined to happen eventually because so many people have been taking advantage of those really generous sign-up bonuses. If you don't have either of these cards, now is a good time to think about whether it makes more sense to get the Reserve card that's got some extra benefits. I'm not going to get into them today, but we've talked on a lot of other shows about the Sapphire Reserve. For many people, that will be the better deal, and we'll probably be recommending that card more now that it's not possible to get both of them.
Yeah, so bad news, but we will continue to find ways to get value out of points and miles.
All right, so one more program update, and this is a quick one, but Alaska and Singapore have just announced a new frequent flyer partnership. Details pending. Everything's not up and running, but looks like it's going to be possible to earn Alaska miles on Singapore flights and vice versa. And it's going to be eventually possible to redeem Alaska miles for Singapore and vice versa. So we'll keep you updated on that, but definitely good news there. More diversity, more ability to redeem those points.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting to the tail end of the stuff. We've still got a few things, got a couple pieces with earning points. So looks like there's a targeted offer for those people to have the SPG Amex card for getting 10,000 additional points for adding an authorized user. So, Eric, what are the situations where this would be something that you'd want to take advantage of, and are there any reasons that you'd want to hold off on doing this?
So it definitely makes sense if you have, first of all, so as AJ said, this is a targeted thing. So not everybody's going to have it, but if you log into your Amex account and you have the SPG card, you should see the offer here. It's actually 2,500 points for each authorized user. At least that's what most people have been targeted for. There might be some variation there, and you can add up to 4. So the opportunity in total to get up to 10,000 points, but each authorized user also has to spend $1,000 on their new card. So this is something that requires a little bit of organization, probably won't make sense for everybody. But it's, star points are super valuable, and especially as we were talking about the transfer bonus to American, if you don't quite have enough star points to make that happen, this could be a way to add some extra ones relatively easily. And the deadline for this one is September 30th.
Yeah, so I guess my 2 cents on this would be, if you're uncertain if this is a good deal for you, just hold off. If you see those star points and you've got something in mind, and it can work, go for it. But I feel like this is one of those promotions. Don't try to make it work for you. It's just one of those opportunistic, hey, if the timing is right, it makes a lot of sense, go for it. But don't try to go after this, I guess.
Oh, all right, so that's going to do it for news and updates for this week. We have a few other earning opportunities, mostly that I want to cover real quick. We're just going to do a fast rundown, and all of these will be in the show notes at the end of for today's episode. First up is get $100 cash back or 10,000 membership rewards points for $150 spend at AT&T. That's an Amex offer, so it's targeted, and you can find that in your Amex account.
Another opportunity with Amex is get 10,000 bonus points for $500 or more spending with Virgin Atlantic.
We've also got American Airlines Business Extra program. So this is like frequent flyer program for businesses. It's free to sign up. And right now they've got a promotion where they will give you a free upgrade after 1 flight. Got details on that in the show notes.
I got some more stuff with Amex. You've got a couple stackable Amex offers with Hilton. So check Amex offers for that. One of them, spend $300, get 3,500 membership rewards. Another one, spend $250, you get $50 back. So those are a couple offers you could stack if you get both of those.
And then lastly, we've got a couple of different ways that you can earn miles if you're going to be donating to the recovery efforts for Hurricane Harvey. There's a few different programs that are participating, and you can earn some miles for dollars donated. So if you're thinking about making a contribution, check this out and get rewarded for the money that you send to help with the recovery effort.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good stuff.
All right. That is going to do it. Thank you guys very much for being with us. Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show